In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on December 29th, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Towson versus William and Mary. Towson comes into this one as the classic road grinder that wants to slow your pulse, while William and Mary looks much more like the fun team your friends text about because they keep cashing tickets and putting up big numbers on the scoreboard. Honestly, these are 2 completely different ideas of what college hoops should look like. Towson wants bruises, missed threes, and a final that feels like it was played in a parking garage. William and Mary wants pace, ball movement, and a crowd that is standing up with 8 minutes left because the home side is already into the 80s again. Here is the thing: Towson has built its identity on being big and physical on the glass, pulling down right around 41 rebounds a night and walling off the paint with bodies. That works great when the opponent is willing to fight in the mud with them. It looks a lot less comfortable when the other team can drag those same bigs out to the perimeter, make them defend space, and turn every possession into a closeout drill. That is exactly the style waiting for them in Williamsburg. If you glance at the records, the gap is obvious. Towson sits at 8-5 overall, with a 6-5-0 record against the spread, and a lot of their damage coming at home in that cozy environment where they are unbeaten. Step away from their own gym, though, and the story flips. They have yet to win a true road game, and every one of those losses has come by at least 2 full possessions. They hang around, they punch, but once the game speeds up or the opponent hits a run, Towson has struggled to keep it inside the number late. William and Mary, on the other hand, has been that annoying friend who keeps sending you screenshots of winning tickets. 9-3 overall, 9-1-0 against the spread, and they are not just sneaking in covers at the horn. They have been clearing numbers by a healthy margin because their style has real runway. They lead the conference in scoring at about 86 to 87 points per game, shooting just under 50% from the field, with a big chunk of those makes coming off assists. That is important here. When a team moves the ball that well, it does not let a slower, more physical opponent load up its help and settle in. Look at who Towson has played recently. They have already taken swings at some serious programs. Trips to UCF and Kansas are no joke. In both of those, once the opponent spread the floor and hit some shots, Towson's defense started to leak. They gave up 86 to UCF and 73 to Kansas, and that was with Kansas cruising in a comfortable double-digit win. You can almost feel the same script lurking here, only this time Towson does not even get the energy of a sold-out big arena on their side. William and Mary's home profile is exactly what you want behind a small favorite. They are perfect at Kaplan Arena so far, and they have not been squeaking by. The recent home box scores read more like a video game session: 104-57, 88-75, 74-63, 96-83. Those are not just wins, those are statements. And it is not like they have been living only on cupcakes. Old Dominion and UTEP are real programs that were fully handled. What really tilts this matchup is how each team prefers to finish games. Towson is not built to play from behind. Their free throw shooting sits in that high 60s neighborhood, and their three-point accuracy is nearer the high 20s than the mid-30s, so when they are chasing, their possessions feel heavy. William and Mary, by contrast, has no issue ramping up the tempo late. If they are protecting a lead, they can keep scoring instead of just bleeding clock. If they somehow fall behind, they have shown over and over that they can play from in front or from behind because their offense travels and their passing unlocks clean looks even under pressure. Conference opener energy matters too. This is a fresh chapter for William and Mary, and you can feel how much belief there is in what they are doing right now. A team that has been printing covers, shooting the cover off the rim, and feeding off a home crowd that has only seen wins is not usually the side that tightens up in this spot. Between the stylistic clash, Towson's road issues, and William and Mary's combination of shot making, ball movement, and home confidence, it sets up as the kind of game where the home favorite can separate across 40 minutes rather than just survive. As our first pick for this matchup, the William and Mary tribe to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. If you just stared at Towson's season box scores without context, you might think this should lean toward a quieter scoring night. Their defense has held teams in the mid-60s on average, and they are perfectly happy walking the ball up and grinding possessions. But that is only half the story. The other half is what happens when they run into somebody who refuses to play at that tempo. William and Mary has been treating scoreboards like suggestion boxes. Their last 5 outings read 96-83, 99-86, 83-79, 88-75, and 92-58. That is not a fluke. It is a pattern. They are pushing the ball, spraying it to shooters, and turning decent looks into great ones with that high assist rate. When a team is that comfortable playing in the 80s, you do not need 40 minutes of track meet to get a high-scoring game. You just need enough stretches where their tempo wins the argument. Towson has quietly shown their hand in that regard too. In games where the opponent dictated pace, their totals have gone way up. Think of the nights against Cornell, USC San Diego, USCIF, and those up-tempo mid-major or high-major opponents. Those contests ended up in the kind of combined scores that live well above what you would expect just from their season averages. It is almost like Towson can hold the lid on for only so long. Once they start playing defense in transition and closing out to multiple shooters, their physicality does not matter as much and the points start stacking. Honestly, this matchup feels tailor-made for one of those nights. William and Mary plays fast by habit, not by necessity. They are not just running on breaks, they push off makes, they run off misses, and they are constantly probing for early offense. Even if Towson slows a good chunk of half-court possessions, the sheer volume of quality looks that William and Mary creates tends to lift the total all by itself. And when the home side gets rolling at Kaplan Arena, the opponent usually ends up getting dragged along on the scoreboard whether they like it or not. You also have the subtle stuff that helps totals but does not show up on a basic tempo chart. William and Mary scores in bunches, which means Towson is likely to spend real time chasing the game. Chasing usually means quicker shots, more threes, and a bit more risk in passing lanes to create extra possessions. That type of game script can add 5 to 10 bonus points over the course of a night without feeling wild at all. Add in the usual late-game fouling if the margin hovers in that 6 to 10 point range, and you have a very natural path to a final that lands in a range where both sides are solidly in the 70s or better. Here is the thing. When you match a defense that has looked great at suffocating slower, less dynamic offenses with a true high-octane, pass-happy attack like William and Mary's, the math starts to lean away from the tidy low-scoring outcome. You do not need Towson to suddenly become an offensive juggernaut. You just need them to do what they normally do, score in the low 70s, and let William and Mary be themselves in front of their own fans. Given how both teams' recent games have trended when faced with pace, this shapes up as a spot where the scoreboard has a real chance to run warmer than the raw season averages might suggest. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Oakland versus Wright State. Oakland walks into the Nutter Center looking like that friend who has already survived 3 final exams and 2 all-nighters by the time everyone else is just opening their books. They are sitting at 6-7, but that record comes with some serious context because they have already spent November and December visiting number 7 Michigan, number 1 Purdue, number 1 Houston, and then seeing number 9 Michigan State in Detroit. You do not come out of that stretch soft. You come out knowing what real athletic size looks like. You know what it feels like when every mistake turns into a run, and you stop getting rattled the first time the crowd gets loud or a whistle goes against you. That is the version of Oakland we get here, not some wide-eyed underdog. Their offense has been humming at a top 100 national scoring pace, around 83 points a night, and it is not smoke and mirrors. They share the ball, they shoot without fear, and they do not mind a little chaos. There is a sort of stubborn confidence in how they play, like, if we can still get shots up against Houston's defense, we can live with whatever the horizon throws at us. Even in that 70-79 loss to Michigan State, you could see it. They ran their stuff, they stayed in their zone looks, and they made a top 10 team keep solving problems for 40 minutes instead of just folding early. On the flip side, Wright State has built a personality around doing the boring things really well, and honestly, that is a compliment. They are also 6-7, but defensively they sit at the top of the Horizon League, holding opponents to about 67.9 points a game and ranking inside the national top 70 in scoring defense. They pressure the ball, they close out on shooters, and they do not give you many easy second chances on the glass. At home, that style plays even better because the Nutter Center can feel like one long test of patience, possession after possession, for visiting guards. The fun part is that Oakland's strengths poke directly at the few places Wright State is not quite bulletproof. The Golden Grizzlies take care of the ball. They own one of the better assist-to-turnover ratios in the league, and they are very comfortable throwing different lineups at you, from smaller shooting groups to more size, with Isaac Garrett and Tuberu Naivalurua crashing inside. That feeds right into this spread, because if the home team is not blowing people out and tends to live in that high 70s scoring range, you are basically asking whether Wright State can keep a battle-tested offense from hanging around all night. Oakland has already covered numbers in nastier gyms than this, and when you give a team with their scoring punch a couple of points to play with rather than asking them to win by margin, it starts to feel like the kind of underdog that keeps you comfortable even when the game swings back and forth. As our first pick for this matchup, the Oakland Golden Grizzlies to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. On paper, Oakland screams an over team at first glance, sitting around 83 scored and 84 allowed, and ranked in the 300s nationally in scoring defense. They have had some games that felt like pure fireworks, like that 98-97 win over Toledo or the 101-92 shootout against Purdue-Fort Wayne, where it looked like both sides were auditioning for a summer league game. At the same time, when they stepped up against those top 10 monsters, the scores did not spin out into the 170s and 180s combined because their zone and their half-court pace forced even elite offenses to actually run possessions instead of just sprinting. Wright State lives in a very different neighborhood, tempo-wise. Their offense is efficient and capable, sitting in the high 70s per game, but the entire game plan is built around that defense that holds teams in the high 60s on average. Look at their recent stretch, and you see a pattern that keeps tugging games back down toward sanity. 70-64 against Eastern Michigan, 74-76 at Marshall, 86-58 against Green Bay. Nothing about those scores screams constant 160-plus environments, and a lot of those finals landed near, not wildly above, what the market expected. Here is the thing, this matchup is a clash of what coaches love on the whiteboard versus what bettors see in the box scores. Oakland wants to spread you out, shoot, and punish any lazy closeout, but they are also very comfortable sitting in that zone, making you throw extra passes and burn clock every trip. Wright State is happy if every possession turns into a test of patience, with Michael Cooper and company grinding through sets, using ball screens, and leaning on that defense to keep the game in a band where one good run wins the night. If both teams were pure run and gun with no resistance, a total north of 160 would feel like a green light. Here, though, you have one side that has to respect the ball pressure and length of Wright State, and another side that has to solve a quirky, experienced Oakland group that has already seen what real high major pace looks like and knows how to drag a game back into half-court mode when it matters. So when you put it all together, the number is asking for sustained hot shooting, very few empty trips, and basically 40 minutes of both teams playing closer to their offensive ceiling than their defensive identity, and that is a lot to ask on a cold late December night in Horizon League play. Oakland's defense is far from pretty on the season, but it has already shown it can tighten up for stretches against better rosters than this, and Wright State's whole identity is built around keeping things from turning into track meets in their building. If this stays in that familiar window where Wright State scores in the high 70s and Oakland is somewhere in the mid-70s or lower, which fits both teams' long-term profiles against quality opponents, you land under a total in the 162 range more often than not. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Yale versus Alabama. Picture this. Coleman Coliseum on a late December night. Yale rolls in with that shiny 11-1 record, feeling pretty good about life, and then realizes the floor in Tuscaloosa tilts a little differently. They have been taking care of business, wrecking their early schedule, lifting a Paradise Jam trophy, and putting up more than 87 points a night with a comfy scoring cushion most evenings. They are smart, patient, and really good at turning games into long chess matches, where every possession is a little puzzle they are happy to solve over and over again. On the other side, Alabama is not interested in puzzles, they are interested in fireworks. This group scores almost 94 points a game, plays at one of the quickest tempos in the country, and treats the three-point line like a launch pad rather than a suggestion. At home, that style gets even louder because the Tide crowd is basically a sixth man that cheers for every early shot clocked three like it is a buzzer beater. You can feel that energy even on television, and if you are watching this game on a stream or on your phone, it will still feel like the volume got turned up a notch. Here is the thing, Yale is used to imposing their rhythm. They slow teams down, get into their sets, and trust the experience of guys who have already been through big moments and tournament runs. They have a core that knows how to share the ball, hit free throws, and stay composed when other teams get sped up. But this matchup asks them to handle a different level of length and speed, possession after possession, in one of the harshest road environments they will see all season. Alabama, for its part, is built to punish even small cracks. You make one lazy closeout, they hit a three. You turn it over once or twice in a row, it becomes a quick 6 or 8 point swing, and suddenly what felt like a tight game stretches into that awkward territory where you catch yourself staring at the scoreboard a little too often. They have a deep roster, full of athletic guards and long wings that fit perfectly into this aggressive, modern, spacing-heavy system. And even if a few rotation pieces have dealt with nagging issues this year, the overall talent pool and the number of capable scorers on the active roster still let them keep the pressure on for a full 40 minutes. So when you hang a big spread in the mid-teens on this matchup, it is not really a slight to Yale, it is more a nod to how quickly Alabama can turn a normal run into a full-blown avalanche. If the Tide get that building humming early, string together a couple of those 10-0 bursts, and keep Yale reacting instead of dictating, this can separate in a hurry and stay there. As our first pick for this matchup, the Alabama Crimson Tide to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Switching gears, let's talk about how this one might actually look on the scoreboard. Honestly, this is where context matters. Books are not pulling this total number out of thin air. You have an Alabama team that lives near the very top of the national scoring charts, throwing up almost 94 points per game, playing fast, and knocking down a big chunk of threes while getting to the free throw line often enough to keep the scoreboard ticking even when the jumper cools off a bit. They do not really hide what they want to do. They speed you up, space you out, and dare you to keep up. Yale, for all its Ivy League polish, is not a slow grind on offense this year either. They are averaging over 87 points per night, they shoot it really well from the floor, and they almost treat the free throw line like a layup line because of how reliable they have been there. Empty trips are rare when they settle into their half-court game. So you end up with one team that wants to run as a lifestyle and another that, while more controlled, is still very comfortable scoring in bunches. Defensively, neither profile screams rock fight. Alabama is better on that end than people give them credit for, but they are far from a lockdown unit, and the way they play, with pace and early offense, naturally inflates possession counts and the other team's opportunities. Yale's numbers lean much more toward "we will outscore you" than "we will suffocate you," which is fun for us as viewers, maybe a little stressful if you are their coaching staff. Put that together, and the default setting for this game feels like a high possession, high shot volume affair where both teams get plenty of chances to see the ball go through the net. Here is where it gets interesting. If Alabama manages to crank the tempo up closer to their comfort zone, Yale does not really have the luxury of walking the ball up and burning 25 seconds every trip, but they are going to have to run with it at least a little, flow into early actions, and trust the same spacing and ball movement that carried them through that tournament in the islands. That dynamic, the fast team dragging the efficient team into a quicker game, is the kind of recipe that often pushes totals toward the high side, especially when both offenses already have confidence. Then you layer in the late game stuff. If the margin is floating around that tricky zone, you can get a stretch of intentional fouls, extra possessions, and a parade to the stripe. Both of these offenses have shown they can handle pressure-free throws, and those extra points in the final 2 or 3 minutes matter a lot more when the total is already anchored in such a big number. Could a cold shooting night or a surprisingly slow rhythm knock this below the number? Of course, that is always in play with a college total this high. But when you zoom out and look at the styles, the scoring habits, and the pace that Alabama usually imposes at home, this matchup feels a lot more like a track meet than a sleepy December slog. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Illinois State versus Drake. Illinois State heads into the Knapp Center as that sneaky little road favorite that makes you raise an eyebrow before you even look at the matchup. On paper, both teams look decent, but they are living very different seasons. Illinois State is carrying a clean, structured profile, stacking wins in a way that feels deliberate rather than lucky, with that blend of home dominance, road toughness, and neutral floor composure that coaches quietly love. They have already taken punches in some tough spots, like going on the road early, facing high major names on neutral floors, and still coming home and handling league games with some authority instead of just scraping by. That run through the Terry's Chocolate ESPN Events Invitational Imagination Bracket, taking care of Charlotte and Furman on consecutive days at Disney's setup in Kissimmee, feels less like a random weekend heater and more like a blueprint for how they want to play when the stakes go up. You can see the pattern from the schedule alone. The losses are mostly to respectable opponents, the wins are rarely chaotic, and they have shown they can leave normal, go win, and then come back and keep their edge. Drake, meanwhile, has that roller coaster portfolio energy. Same general level of talent, same conference, but a very different mood. Under the new staff, they have already gone from an overtime home loss to Robert Morris to a comfortable blowout of Buena Vista, from a frustrating home loss to SIU Edwardsville to a strong neutral win over Georgia Tech. Then you toss in a 108-57 demolition of Western Illinois, followed almost immediately by a 69-74 home loss to UAB and a 94-99 track meet loss to North Dakota State. It is like watching someone alternate between cruise control and flooring the gas, and that which version shows up tonight question is exactly what scares you if you are thinking about trusting them against a number. Here is the thing, when you filter out the noise and look at who these teams have been over the first few weeks, Drake's scoring margin looks pretty solid at a glance. They score plenty, they give up a manageable amount, but the game log tells you that the margin comes with big mood swings, especially in this very building. Illinois State's margin, on the other hand, has been built more on repeatable habits than on wild spikes. They have stacked double-digit wins in league play already, kept the defensive standards reasonably high, and looked less fragile when the opponent refuses to go away. The market has already tipped its hand. Most books are hanging Illinois State around -2.5, with a money line in that mid-1.6 range, and that type of short road favorite number usually boils down to one simple question. When this turns into a half-court grind late in the second half, which team is less likely to blink on a key possession, miss an assignment, or force a hero shot out of frustration? Given Illinois State's steadier form, their proven ability to function away from home, and Drake's habit of turning the Knapp Center into a drama stage instead of a fortress, the more trustworthy side of that line sits with the visitors, even if it feels a little uncomfortable taking a road favorite in a conference gym that can get loud in a hurry. As our first pick for this matchup, the Illinois State Redbirds to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The current number is sitting at about 144.5 across most sports books, and you can almost hear bettors talking themselves into points just by glancing at some of Drake's big offensive nights. You see that Western Illinois game where Drake pushes triple digits, the 90+ against Buena Vista, and your brain goes, all right, these guys can light it up, this has to lean high, before you even think about context. But let me explain why that first impression can be a bit of a trap. Once you set the non-Division I and clear mismatch games off to the side, Drake's scoring environment against real resistance has been far more subdued. LSU and Charleston both ended in that low 70s to low 60s band. SIU Edwardsville dragged them into a 61-59 grind in this very gym. And their early Valley trip to Evansville finished 66-65. Even that 99-94 loss to North Dakota State needed the right opponent and pace to explode like that. Illinois State's rhythm tells a similar story from the other side. Yes, they have stacked some eye-catching blowouts, the kind of 90+ nights against overmatched teams that look great in a highlight reel. But when you focus on games against stronger or comparable opponents, the scores tighten up. Charlotte in the 70s, Furman in the low 70s, Eastern Kentucky in that high 80s to high 70s spot, the road win at Southern Illinois in the mid-70s, and the comfortable home win over Indiana State still landing in a space where the defense actually matters. Their season-long points allowed number sits in the high 60s, which backs up what the scoreboard is already hinting at. This group is not afraid to guard for 40 minutes and let the offense be efficient instead of frantic. There is also the calendar piece that quietly matters here. Late December in conference play is not the same as an early November bye game. Coaches are deeper into the scouting, rotations are a little tighter, and possessions start to feel heavier, especially in a building where both teams know each other's playbooks pretty well by now. The emotional energy is high, but the tempo does not always match it, and you often get games that look intense but still finish with totals sitting in the low 130s or high 130s rather than racing into the 150s. So if you picture the flow here, it is less of a pickup run and more of a Valley chess match. A lot of half-court possessions, both teams having to work to get clean looks and enough defense to make every run feel like it costs something. That type of script points to a final score profile like 70-something to high 60s, or low 70s on one side and mid-60s on the other, which slots comfortably under a total sitting in the mid-140s. It still allows for runs and some fun stretches. It just does not scream all gas. No breaks for 40 minutes. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Utah versus Washington. This one is such a fun spot because on paper it looks simple, but it really is not as straightforward as home favorite. Big number, shrug and move on. You have Washington sitting at 8-4, protecting a 5-1 record in Seattle, and they get Utah at 8-4 as well, still winless in true road games and living mostly off that comfy Huntsman Center air in a couple of neutral site showcases. Now drop that into Alaska Airlines Arena, late tip, Star Wars night with people in costumes roaming the aisles, and you can almost feel the home side wanting to put on a show rather than just scrape by. The clash in styles is where this spread really starts to make sense. Utah, under a new staff, has leaned into skill, spacing, and shot making, piling up points with smooth offense, ball movement, and a barrage of threes rather than bullying people on the block. They are scoring in the low 80s on average, shooting efficiently from the field and knocking down close to 9 threes a night at a healthy clip, which is beautiful when those jumpers fall and absolutely brutal when your legs get heavy in a different gym. Washington, on the other hand, is built like an old-school Big Ten bruiser that happens to run modern sets, happy to trade pretty for punishing if that is what the game calls for. If you have watched the Huskies at all this season, you know the identity is not subtle. They crash the glass like it owes them money, sit near the top of the country in total rebounds and offensive rebound rate, and they turn every empty trip into a wrestling match on the boards. That is the kind of profile that travels, but it is especially mean when it lives at home, because every second chance putback in Seattle feels like a mini run, and the building feeds off those sequences. Utah, by contrast, is almost perfectly break-even on the boards, basically trading misses with opponents, which is fine in your own building but a whole lot scarier when you walk into a team that is grabbing everything in sight. Here is the thing, Washington is not just big, it is organized in how it uses that size. They keep opponents in the low 70s, hold shooting percentages in check, and force you to hit contested jumpers over length on one end while Steinbach, Kepnang, and friends pound away on the other. That is like trying to win a street race in a sports car while the other guy is quietly driving a tank. Over 40 minutes, the tank usually wins. Utah's path, realistically, asks for a lot to go right at once. They need hot shooting from the perimeter, crisp ball handling against long guards, and enough from Dawes and the remaining bigs to keep Washington from living on the offensive glass. And remember, Utah is doing all that while managing injuries in the rotation, especially up front, so the Utes are already stretching a thinner front line in a game where the opponent's best trait is making you box out for your life. That is not exactly the friendliest draw for a first true road test in league country. Washington has its own injury issues. Sure, one of their key scorers on the perimeter is still sidelined with a hand issue, and there have been hits to the front court earlier this season, but the important part for this matchup is that the current active core still tilts heavily toward size, rebounding, and rim protection. They just rolled San Diego by 30 in this building without that missing scoring guard, and they looked like a team that finally figured out what it wants to be, especially after the sting of that loss to Seattle across town. That kind of quick response usually tells you something about a group's floor and its ceiling. So when you blend all of that together, the number around double digits does not feel quite as outrageous as it looks at first glance. You have a physical home favorite, lights on, event night, already proven blowout ability in that building, taking on a road team that leans on shot making, sits at a clear disadvantage on the glass, and has to figure out a real frontcourt puzzle against one of the most punishing rebounding teams on its schedule so far. If this plays to form, the style gap and the crowd energy both tilt one way, and that is usually where a spread in this range ends up getting decided. Not on one shot, but on a slow, steady squeeze that finally breaks the game open in the second half. As our first pick for this matchup, the Washington Huskies to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Utah games have lived in the low 160s on average, with the Utes scoring in the low 80s and giving up close to 79, so the box scores already look like someone turned the sliders up a notch. They play with rhythm, push the ball, spread the floor, and their shot profile leans into threes and trips to the free throw line, which is basically the modern recipe for big totals. Washington's profile is a little different, but it still pulls the score upward more often than not. They put up more than 80 points a night themselves and hold opponents in the low 70s, yet that gap is built on getting extra possessions, not grinding games to a halt. Every offensive rebound, every long miss that turns into a run-out, every scramble off a blocked shot adds possessions, and more possessions are the quiet engine that usually drives an over, even when one defense looks solid on paper. Let me explain how those two styles fit together. Utah wants a game where the ball is humming side to side, shooters are stepping into threes, and Brown or McHenry can get 2 feet in the paint and spray the ball out. Washington, oddly enough, is fine with that pace as long as the first shot is contested because they trust their length to bother the initial attempt and their size to swallow the miss. That is how you get those sequences where a 30-second possession for Utah turns into a 5-second putback for Washington on the other end. Scoreboard still goes up. You also have the whistle factor lurking underneath everything. Utah likes to live at the stripe with that attacking, guard-driven style, and Washington's physical front line invites a certain kind of officiating crew to blow the whistle a little more often. Free throws are the easiest points on the floor, the clock stops, the defense gets no chance to set up a fast break the other way. And yet the total keeps climbing. If both teams are in the bonus for long chunks of each half, you can see how a number that looks aggressive in the afternoon suddenly feels a bit light by the final media timeout. There is another subtle piece here. Because both offenses have a reliable way to manufacture points when the half-court stuff bogs down, the scoring has multiple safety nets. Utah can simply space it, run a guard big ball screen and trust its primary scorer to create, while Washington can lean into post touches, offensive rebounds, and foul pressure whenever the jumpers are not falling. Games like that usually avoid those long, 6-minute scoring droughts on both sides that kill overs. And while you never want to base a play purely on narrative, the setting matters a little bit. Big non-conference showcase at home, themed night, national television slot, a fan base still buzzing about a recent rivalry loss and a bounce-back win, and two teams that both actually enjoy playing fast and free rather than squeezing the air out of the ball. That environment tends to reward aggression, not caution, which is good news if you are rooting for points rather than defense-heavy slog ball. So when you stack the pace, the shot profiles, the rebounding that adds possessions instead of killing them, and the foul dynamics that can turn the second half into a parade to the line, you end up with a script that leans much more toward a track meet than a rock fight. It may not be chaos from the opening tip, but possession by possession, this matchup has plenty of ways to sneak into the 160s or even a touch higher if either side catches a real shooting groove. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.